Hi, my name is Rowana Miller, and I am the author of Secrets of the Blue Hand Girls. It's my first novel. It is a YA thriller about a girl who finds an anonymous letter in her locker instructing her to dye her hand blue. She follows it. Who knows what secrets may be unveiled? And in honor of First Chapter Friday, I am going to read the first chapter. I hope you enjoy. I dye my hand blue when I'm alone, the way the instructions say. I buy a box of ballpoint pens on my way to school, and when I get there, I crack open each one into a Tupperware in the second floor supply closet. Then I press my palm into the Tupperware's base, and when I unstick my hand from the plastic, it comes up indigo, except for the pale web of lines in my skin. Completely coated, the instructions say. So I keep rubbing the ink into the lines until my whole palm is blue, my other hand inside a rubber glove so I don't get the ink on it. There will be a penalty for drips. And smooth it into the backs of my fingers, my knuckles, and under my fingernails. I found the letter in my locker 3 days ago, when I was desperate for a distraction, my name etched on the folded paper with a fountain pen. I don't know how many times I've reread it. Definitely enough to have it memorized, but I keep it propped on a bottle of Windex as I fill in the last few patches of blue, just in case I've forgotten a step. K, it starts. We find you intriguing. And I mean, that was enough. The air in the supply closet is electric with mildew and ink fumes. I check my watch. 4 minutes to first period. I flap my blue hand in the thick air to dry the last of the ink, then graze my blue palm with one gloved fingertip. It comes up clean. I peel off the glove and stick it behind a bottle of Clorox, then fold up the letter again and tuck it into my backpack. 3 minutes to first period. There are two remaining unopened ballpoint pens, and I stick them in my pocket as I run to calculus. It's the Thursday before Halloween, which means that no one wants a pop quiz, so Mr. Holmes is definitely planning a pop quiz. On quiz days, he locks the door the moment the minute hand hits 8:01. He says the first 59 seconds after 8 o'clock are his gift to us, and gives zeros to anyone unfortunate enough to miss their train. New York City's transit system is woefully unpredictable, and you should factor that into your decision about what time to leave for school, Mr. Holmes wrote in the syllabus. Mr. Holmes didn't say anything about being late due to following mysterious instructions, but I doubt he would have considered that a reasonable excuse either. I skid through the door at 7:59 and land in my assigned seat, right underneath Mr. Holmes' framed portrait of Watson and Crick. This is the kind of man Mr. Holmes is. On the first day of class, he told us that he was teaching for the prodigies among us, the Watsons and the Cricks, those who would be discovering the DNA of mathematics. And if the rest of us didn't understand his methodology, well, that said more about us than it did about him, right? After Mr. Holmes made that announcement, one senior raised her hand and asked him about Rosalind Franklin, the biophysicist whose research Watson and Crick relied upon, the one who died via exposure to radiation in the process of conducting her work, but whom Watson and Crick barely left as a footnote in their scholarship. Mr. Holmes got very red-faced and sputtery at that point, and muttered something about only winners being able to stick around. It was almost impressive how ill-suited his response was to a class at an all-girls school. At that moment, I decided that Mr. Holmes was an asshole, and in the 2 months since then, I've received very little evidence to reconsider that verdict. My table mates stare at me through drowsy eyes. Two of them are here today, but the seat across from me is empty. It's empty most of the time, to be honest. But when she's there, Zola, the senior who asked about Rosalind Franklin, fills more than the seat. She's the kind of person who radiates enough to fill the entire room. After a long moment during which my table mates pretend they're not looking at my hand, one of them, Priscilla, the school's resident weed dealer, although you would never know it from her signature Prada sunglasses, says, "What's up with the blue?" It's the greatest number of words she's said to me all year. Nothing. She raises her pristinely plucked eyebrows. Did you do it with Margaret O'Malley? So I'm not the only one. I wonder who else got letters. I wondered if they all followed the instructions. Quiz time, says Mr. Holmes, slamming the door shut and twisting the lock with as much panache as possible for a burned-out 40-something who wishes he were anything but a high school calc teacher. Clear your desks and take out your number 2 pencils. There will be no credit if you use a pen. He says the same sentences and uses the same intonation every time he announces a pop quiz. The emphasis is on the time, the clear, and the pen. I look down at my hand. The ink will stain the page. And when it does, Mr. Holmes will come up with an excuse to dock me points. Even if all my answers are correct, he'll claim that I wasn't showing my work, or that I was too careless for him to even know what my answers were, which really isn't like me, is it now? And even though I wish I were the kind of person who doesn't care about a few points off a math quiz, I can't stop myself from replaying the motivational speech that runs through my mind at least 4 times a day. You need full marks because you need an A in the class, and you need an A in the class to keep your scholarship, and you need your scholarship because colleges lose their minds over Davidson High School, and you need colleges to lose their minds over you to get into Northwestern next year and forget that you ever had to suffer through high school in the first place. After Mr. Holmes hands me my quiz, I tuck a tissue between the side of my palm and the slip of paper. He raises a silent eyebrow at the blue and moves on. Despite Mr. Holmes' incomprehensible lectures, my hours per day spent memorizing the textbook have rendered the problems easy and dull. I turn in the quiz after a perfunctory double check. As I return to my table, I notice another blue hand in the room. Not Margaret. Margaret is the reason why this school now offers AP Computer Science. The hand belongs to Vanessa Hargrove, about whom I know exactly 2 things. Number 1, her wrists always contain matching stacks of Van Cleef and Arpels and Cartier bracelets, and 2, her hand is currently blue. Put down your pencils. The quiz is over. Once again, put down your pencils, says Mr. Holmes. He unlocks the door, and from the other side, Zola strides out of quiz jail in a way that makes me feel stupid for being on time. Her long red hair bounces behind her, one stray tendril swinging its way over her shoulder, slashing across the Davison High School crest embroidered on the white polo of her uniform. Mr. Holmes meets her sharp blue eyes with his unreadable black ones. Thank you for joining us, Miss Wolfe. Always a pleasure, Zola says. Fantastic pocket square, Mr. Holmes. Today, Mr. Holmes' pocket square is red with orange paisley swirls, stark against his plaid olive jacket. It isn't one of his fresher combinations. It's lousy timing for a mismatched outfit, too. In addition to being our calc teacher, he's the director of Davison's famed internship program. So after school today, he'll be running this season's internship expo featuring the girls who worked at the most prestigious companies last summer. For the second year that I've been eligible, I'm not one of those girls. The third-floor bathroom has seen a normal number of stress tears from me about this. Thank you, Mr. Holmes says stiffly. Zola nods at him, chin up before down, and folds herself, all 6 feet of her, into the seat across from me. Her eyes dart to my hand and then to the tissue on my desk, stamped with the side of my palm print. A smirk twitches on her lips. Your hand is blue, Anderson. I've noticed. I try my best to maintain eye contact with her while reaching into my backpack for my calc binder. It doesn't work. I come up with a fistful of crumpled history handouts instead. Got a reason for the ink? Zola's desk is bare, except for a single sheet of loose-leaf paper, which I know from experience she's not even going to pretend to use for notes. Her favorite things to doodle are thunderstorms. It's an experiment, I tell her. Oh? I'm putting aside 25 cents every time someone informs me that my hand is blue, testing the human impulse to point out the obvious. Let me pay my share, then. Zola reaches into the pocket of her slacks and pulls out a quarter, which she presses into the center of my blue palm. When I peel off the coin, the circle it leaves behind is slightly less concentrated with ink than the rest of my hand. I say. Quiet, table 4, says Mr. Holmes. Looks like you need a touch-up, Zola says, her voice a shade softer. If you let it wear away, you won't be able to test for a damn thing. A few minutes later, the 2 extra ballpoint pens and I are back in the closet, and I'm massaging the ink into the pale circle. Is there a point to your experiment? Priscilla asks when I get back to the classroom. I shift the tissue back under my palm to keep my binder page pristine while I take notes. Mr. Holmes collects the binders once a month and kills our participation grades if he doesn't think they're tidy. If you can figure it out, I'd love to hear it. There are flickers of blue in the halls today. I don't see who all the hands belong to, but I catch some. The professional model who sports an immaculate face of makeup to school every day, the goalie of the soccer team, the a cappella singer who wears her uniform beneath Chanel jackets sharp enough to slice a cantaloupe. Just on the journey to the library for lunch, I count 5 blue hands, all on other members of the junior class. When I give tours of Davison for prospective students and their families during my weekly shifts as a student tour guide, the library is the only room that I don't have to pretend to revere. The arched ceilings smooth out the sounds of pages turning and laptop keys clacking into a single blanket of atmospheric noise, and the skylight casts a hazy glow onto the stacks of shelves that surround the cluster of armchairs in the center of the space. A few girls are scattered throughout the room, 2 pressing their heads together over one of the mahogany tables near the doorway, another hooking up her computer to the printer just past the biology section. But unlike in the atrium, where most girls eat lunch, there's no one stage whispering about the rooftop party on the Upper West Side where someone lit a bottle of peach schnapps on fire. As I head toward my usual armchair, the one with the gingham patch sewn over a rip in the leather, I see several blue fingers rise over one of the aisles in the NYC history section. The fingers wrap around a fabric volume, then disappear behind the shelf. Maybe the owner of that hand has the right idea. Today, there may be a better use of the library than doing homework. Before I make it to NYC history, the girl steps out of this aisle. I freeze. Of all the juniors at this school, the only one I'd hoped had nothing to do with this was Aubrey Clark. As usual, her dark hair, all bangs and no length, is obscuring too much of her face for me to see her expression. All I can tell is that she's looking straight at me, and then she cocks her head back toward the aisle. Suddenly, my usual armchair seems like exactly the right place for me to be, right under the skylight and in view of the doorway. I swivel in my path and nestle myself in the chair's familiar embrace. Looking anywhere but the NYC history section, I wrestle around in my backpack until my hand connects with a folder, then yank it out and spread it on my lap. Info sheet for spring internship applications? Perfect. It's the only thing in the world that merits my attention at this moment. The leather of the chair next to mine releases a squeak as a body settles into it. You shouldn't make it so obvious when you're trying to avoid people. I don't look up from the internship info sheet, even though it might as well be written in hieroglyphics. I have homework to do. You always do, don't you? Aubrey reaches over and spreads her blue hand across the surface of the page, leaving a stamp of smudged ink. Fuck. I plan out what to say next. I don't know what you want, but I'm not interested in having anything in common with you. So if you don't mind, please go back to reading the Unabomber's Manifesto or whatever it is you do for fun. But those words vanish as soon as I meet her gaze. Please go away. What do you think of the letter? My breath snags. I don't want to talk about it with you. Personally, I thought it was quite interesting, especially given who else showed up with blue hands today. I don't say anything for approximately 6 of my heartbeats. Like I said, we're not having this conversation. You know, I've always admired you, Kay, Aubrey says, tracing one blue finger down the side of my math worksheet. You don't compromise. The blue looks oddly natural on her. A thought occurs to me, and it's probably stupid to give myself away by voicing it, but I can't help myself. You weren't the one who sent the letter, were you? Aubrey laughs. The sound is rough like an emery board scraped across gravel. Oh, I wish. Unfortunately, for a change, I'm just as much of a pawn as you are. Didn't you have some research to do on the other side of the library? I was just going back there. Aubrey stands and pats my shoulder, leaving a faint blue stain on my white uniform polo. You should work on your collaboration skills, you know. Colleges tend to like that. I press my lips together, resisting the urge to have the last word as she strolls back toward the NYC history section. It occurs to me that this is the second real conversation I've ever had with Aubrey Clark. I hope it will produce fewer casualties than the first one. I have to know who sent the letter. That's all I can think about today in AP Physics. If it wasn't Aubrey, and that's assuming I believe her, then who would issue such a strange, seductive challenge? In a school like Davison, of course there are rumors about secret societies, although it isn't clear whether those stem from anything that's actually going on here or whether someone was trying to wish fulfill this place into becoming Yale. Until now, I assumed it was the latter, but I've probably been projecting. Instead of concentrating on the wheeled block that I've sent rolling down the ramp on my lab table, I think about the letter. Kay, we find you intriguing. We've been watching you. We know that you sometimes put on smudgy eyeliner in the third-floor bathroom before classes start. We know that your favorite scarf is the striped orange and red hand-me-down that you got from your aunt. We know that at lunch, when you're pretending to study, you're listening to true crime podcasts against the backdrop of the pink noise of the library. If we may offer a recommendation for a case to look into, we think you'd be interested in the Poughkeepsie-based murderer who, upon his arrest, was also discovered to be harboring several millions worth of Nazi-looted artwork. We have a request for you. You don't need to follow it, but you should. We want you to dye your right hand blue 3 days from now before class. Completely blue, no cracks, no faded patches, and no drips on any other part of your body. We'll be watching closely, and if you violate any of our rules, there will be penalties. Don't tell anyone about this note, of course. That should go without saying. When people ask about your hand, tell them it was your idea. If you talk, the penalties will be much worse, and much further reaching than the penalties for dripping. That's everything we have to tell you. So what's the verdict? Kay, do you find us intriguing? My lab group mate, Ruby, yelps. I realize that I've sent the block careening toward her arm. Watch yourself, Kay. I wince. Sorry. Stop being so fucking dramatic, Rubes, says another one of our group mates, Samira, as she slides a metal weight into the divot at the top of the wheeled block. The block is like 50 grams. Samira is wearing yellow latex gloves, but I noted earlier that her hands are undyed underneath. You're one to talk about drama, Ruby says. Come back to me when you've gotten yourself unbanned from every karaoke spot in Koreatown. Samira emits a high-pitched giggle. Oh my gosh, shut up. The last member of our lab group, Lee, looks up from their notes, their thick black eyeliner framing a bemused glance at Samira. Oh damn, I thought you were still allowed and at least sing 31. What'd you do this time? Samira launches into a convoluted explanation involving a $40 mascara, a fake ID, and an underripe banana. I listen as I punch times into the stopwatch next to the ramp, and I laugh at all the right moments. But here's the thing. After physics gets out, Samira will go to practice with her band, Ruby will meet up with her boyfriend at the pier, and Lee will do whatever non-binary emo stoners do with their friends. And I'll go home. Maybe I'll rewrite my notes for the tours I'll be giving next month as Davison's admission season intensifies, or maybe I'll prep for tomorrow's tutoring session with the fourth grader who lives in my building so that I have the cash to enable my chai habit this week. Or maybe I'll walk around Bedford-Stuyvesant and listen to a true crime podcast, even though the episodes make me feel a little sick after what happened 2 years ago. Probably, though, I'll do homework that isn't due for another week. Otherwise, how will I stay a week ahead? That is so funny, Samira, but could you run the experiment with the 100-gram block, I say? I don't want to have to stay late again to finish the lab. We've all got things to do. When I get home, my Aunt Shell is at the kitchen island, sifting through a stack of papers. She's been living with us for the past year while she pursues her master's in environmental studies at NYU, although she's not around much these days. It probably doesn't do me any favors to admire the way she dresses. As the queer one between the two of us, it's kind of embarrassing for me, but I can't help myself. Really, it's the way that her clothes fit. Her vest nips in right at her waist, and the hems of her jeans overlap just a shade with the tops of her ankle boots. I stick a hand in the pocket of my slacks. No matter how I tuck and cuff my uniform, it'll never look as good on me as the crisp polos and work pants do on the interchangeable skinny white masks on my TikTok feed. But Aunt Shell has an advantage there. She's not dressing around a great stress weight gain of freshman year. Grief and guilt will do that to you. I'd almost forgotten that you lived here, I say. It's good to see you. Aunt Shell doesn't look up from her papers. Yeah, sorry, lots going on. Spending a lot of time on the phone with Carlos, I ask. Aunt Shell nods. Carlos, her boyfriend, works at a Tesla plant in rural Pennsylvania. They met a few months ago when he came to the city for a conference and she was protesting outside it. Somehow she was willing to take him at his word that he's motivated by a love of engineering rather than a hatred of democracy. How many satellites has he hijacked today? I ask, slinging my backpack onto the floor and pawing through the cupboard for microwave popcorn. Kay, you know that's not what he does. For the first time, Aunt Shell glances up. What's up with your hand? My blue hand freezes, stark against the yellow of the popcorn bag, my arm midway in flight to the microwave. It's for... If this had been half a year ago, I wouldn't have hesitated. Even when I was a little kid growing up in Brooklyn and she was a teenager in Iowa, I called her a few times a month to update her on my growing collection of secrets. When I lost the ring that my mother gave me for my 5th birthday, I whispered the truth to Aunt Shell on the phone that night. I told her about my panicked first crush on a boy at 8 years old and my even more panicked first crush on a girl at 11. If I was both queer and a female, I could never be president. And when my grades plummeted in the middle of freshman year after Emily Hendricks turned up dead, Aunt Shell was the only person who knew the real reason I stopped doing my homework. If she hadn't moved in with us, I don't know if I would have been able to break through the clouds of horror that clustered around me after that. But that was all pre-Carlos. Now she has him in a way that is so all-consuming that 3 days ago, on Emily's birthday, I didn't even see her at home. I had to be alone while I lit a cinnamon candle next to my laptop and reread my 2 months of texts with Emily. But that was also the day the letter came. And now I have... Kay, we find you intriguing. It's a social experiment, I say after too long a pause. For class? She asks. No. My throat unsticks itself, and I finally place my popcorn in the microwave. I Thought Davison was too buttoned up. I wanted to see how far I can push the dress code. I braced myself for the inevitable lecture about not squandering my scholarship. After all, Aunt Shell's full ride to a private boarding school was what put her on the path to Northwestern. That's what prompted me to look into private education for myself, too. Instead, Aunt Shell's lips twist slightly, and she looks down at her papers again. I set the microwave timer and lean over Aunt Shell's shoulder to read the page on the top of the stack. It's a form titled Lease Agreement. I breathe in. Aunt Shell? Kay, I've wanted to bring this up for a while now, she says, but I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Neither of us says anything for a moment. Inside the microwave, the popcorn begins to pop. So what is it then? I ask. You know I never expected things to progress like this with Carlos, Aunt Shell says. Stop hedging. My voice comes out harder than I intend. Aunt Shell takes a breath. I'm moving to Pennsylvania and finishing my degree remotely. Her jaw muscles tense. I realize now that she's expecting a lecture. And sure, there's plenty I could say. It's almost too ironic, pursuing environmental studies in a home where Tesla pays half the rent. But nothing will make a difference if she already has the lease. I hope he's worth it, I say. The microwave hasn't stopped yet, but I open the door and take out the bag of popcorn, with the kernels still bursting inside the thin paper, and walk out of the kitchen. I dig my fingernails into my palm, hoping that the sting will trigger some feeling, any feeling. I close the door to my room and lay the popcorn bag on my desk. There's homework to do. I slip a tissue underneath my blue hand. It's starting to feel like a ritual. And open my history binder to a fresh page. Marbury versus Madison is more important than anything else I could have on my mind right now. More important than Aunt Shell, more important than the letter in my locker, and certainly more important than the final text Emily sent me the day preceding the manhole explosion that seized her life before it had truly started. I was right, you know. My cinnamon candle is now a corpse, a thin layer of wax forming an exoskeleton around a stubby whisper of a wick. But even if I could burn it forever, I'd never know what she meant. As I open the left flap of my history binder, a scrap of lined paper falls out of the plastic. The edges of the paper are rough. Written in blue ink, it says, "Stop using the tissue. We want you to leave a mark." I slide the tissue out from under the side of my palm. When I'm done writing, the page is stamped with my handprints. I hope you enjoyed.